South Africa continues to digest the statements made by US President Donald Trump, including his threat to cut funding to the country going forward. The presidency has responded by saying it wants to engage Trump to give him a better idea of what the Expropriation Act is all about, adding that the US itself has a similar law that's used to serve the public interest, and also saying that South Africa is a constitutional democracy in which perceived unilateral actions by government can be challenged in the country's courts. So, is this a turning point in South Africa's relations with the United States? Where to from here? Well, to share his views on some of the issues, I'm joined by Mikatekiso Kubayi. He's a senior researcher at the Institute of Global Dialogue. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. So, were you surprised by Donald Trump's utterances against South Africa, and how impactful do you think the cut in aid to us will be if he goes ahead with it?
Good afternoon, my sister, and thank you for having me. No, I was not surprised at all by Donald Trump's utterances. We will recall his position on African countries, African economies in his first term. He did not have, savory things to say about the African continent. But this also follows, his approach, to relations with Canada, with Mexico, actually even with the European Union as well, European countries. This is not any way surprising at all by Donald Trump. But what is of concern, is the level at which, he is willing to, the extent to which he's willing to make pronouncements, based on uninformed, positions, and whereas he's got an embassy here in the country, he's got, many advisors, people that are in the know, of exactly what is going on. But for some reason, none of those things seem to be to his disposal, at his disposal.
Yes.
One would have expected him to have known a little bit more, before he said what he said.
So the presidency here in South Africa says it wants to engage Trump on the country's expropriation law. How do you see that going? I mean, is there even any diplomatic room for this to happen, do you think?
Well, if this development with Mexico and Canada is anything to go by, it seems, President Donald Trump is willing to deal, right? Is willing to discuss, is willing to engage. So that is an opportunity to have a discussion and to see how relations can best be strengthened, best be promoted in a manner that is win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's a positive sign. Well, I hope it happens exactly as it is. And our president is also a good negotiator as well. So it's possibly a positive.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation because, I mean, this Expropriation Act has been 5 years in the making, and also there has been a lot of, argy-bargy around it, a lot of conflict around it, and finally it was signed into law. I think for many black South Africans, this would be a non-negotiable. I mean, with the likes of the EFF actually saying that the Expropriation Act that we have is a watered-down version of what it should be. So it's a tricky area.
It is a very tricky area. However, what is not tricky is the reality that South Africa isn't, just there for the show to entertain the rest of the world. South African domestic affairs are South African domestic affairs, not for the United States to interfere with or anybody else. We have a particular history, we have a particular set of material conditions on the ground, and we have to address those. They have nothing to do with the United States or anybody else. You cannot contest the impact, that apartheid has had on this country. We're still living with massive, one of the most unequal societies in the world. We're still living in a country whose economy is, completely, disproportionate, in terms of the ownership of the economy. The black majority in the main still, do not have, much of a stake in the country's economy and so on. We have massive problems and we have to deal with those. So it has nothing to do with the United States. And in fact, he would have to understand, he also has domestic, challenges. That is why he is forcing companies to go and invest in the United States and build production there, because they de-invested, in industry for a long time.
Yeah.
So he's got those issues to deal with, and we have our issues to deal with. No one is saying don't do this, yeah.
Yeah, Mika, let me just come in there very quickly before I let you go. What's happening thus far? Of course, there's been the postponement of tariffs on Canada and Mexico, but the Chinese tariffs have gone ahead, taken effect today. Ultimately, if we do continue on this path, and ultimately when those postponements lapse and he does levy tariffs on other countries, what sort of impact do you think this is going to have on global trade and specifically on South Africa?
Well, for now, it's a wait and see. Tariffs have been paused. China, has retaliated. It's really a wait and see to what extent this could have a ripple effect on everybody else. I mean, the world economy is very integrated. We buy from China, we buy from the United States. The United States buys equipment, from China and vice versa. So those sort of prices, transferring to South African consumers, it's a wait and see for now. It's still early days in this tactic, of President Donald Trump. It would be very interesting to see, because so far he hasn't pulled the trigger, if you like.
Yeah.
It's a bit in abeyance. But there would of course be a level of impact on everybody else. I mean, the whole world is watching and possibly preparing for the possibility of price hikes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mika, for your time. That was Mikatekiso Kubayi. He's a senior researcher at the Institute of Global Dialogue.